And we're continuing with the 9th chapter of Black Hearts in Battersea. The Duke has had the party for the art students, and 2 of them have been given scholarships, and out of that, because Simon was a scholarship winner, it has been revealed that he has no idea what his last name was, although the Duke's staff have acted strangely again and made it so that Simon couldn't finish the story. Also, the tapestry that Simon restored is gone. There was a hunt for it. It was not found. Simon picked up the dress for Dido. Dido was very happy to get it, and we will pick up from there. But Simon, getting into bed, felt a pang of dismay. Did Dido but know it? She had little cause to thank him for what he was going to do soon. They set off for the fair next day in high fettle, met Justin on the bridge, as arranged, and went on to collect Sophie from the Cobbs. Dido was delighted to meet the kitten again there, and begged that it might be allowed to accompany them to the fair, but Simon felt that it would be too much of an anxiety. He had enough responsibility as it was. At first, Justin and Dido were inclined to regard one another with jealous suspicion and hostility. Justin looked down on Dido as a gutter brat, and she sneered at him as a high-nosed countercoxcomb. But Simon and Sophie were so cheerful and good-natured that no one could be long in their company without succumbing to their influence, and soon the whole party were in charity with one another, and marched off toward Clapham in good spirits. Dido thanked Sophie very prettily for the blue dress, while Justin went so far as to say she looked quite well in it, and he wouldn't have recognized her. The fair was already in full swing when they reached Clapham Common. Hucksters were shouting their wares, shrill music from the trumpets and hurdy-gurdies competed with them, and the roar of the happy crowds could be heard above that of the giddy-go-round. "Where shall we go? What shall we do first?" said Simon, surveying the colorful booths. "Shooting gallery, imperial theatre, showing panoramas from history, fat lady, snake charmer, living skeleton, mermaid, flying boats, wise pig, Drury Lane drama, swan boats on the long pond, whirligigs." "Oh!" cried Dido. "Everything, everything!" Simon looked at Sophie. Her cheeks were pink and her eyes shone bright with excitement. "Isn't this famous?" she said. "Who'd have thought a year ago we'd ever be having such a gay time?" They did everything. They won coconuts at the coconut shies, looked at the fat lady and the living skeleton. Very poor show for a penny, Dido considered. Flew on the flying boats. Justin turned very pale, but recovered himself after partaking of 7 ginger nuts and a glass of lemonade, and sampled the Drury Lane drama and the Imperial Theatre. They interviewed the talking pig, which would answer any question put to it, and found that the answers consisted of grunts. They ate oysters and plum cakes and ginger wine at Barney's restaurant. Justin treated Dido to 2 rides on the giddy-go-round. The Duke had given him half a guinea, and he had forgotten to return Simon's half-crown. They whirled off, riding on a golden goose and a scarlet camel respectively. Simon took Sophie sailing on a swan boat, and the whole party met again at the shooting gallery, where Simon, whose marksmanship was excellent after several years of hunting for his dinner with a bow and arrow, knocked down 10 bottles with 10 shots. "First prize, sir," said the man glumly, and handed Simon a huge china vase. It was so big that Dido could have climbed inside of it. "He doesn't want to carry that about," said the quick-witted Sophie. "Give him what it's worth instead." The showman gave Simon 10 shillings. "I dare say it's worth 3 times as much," muttered Justin, and he spent it on doughnuts for the whole party, and a visit to the fire-breathing dragon, where Dido disgraced them by tiptoeing around to the back and discovering a little man in the dragon's stomach producing jets of steam by means of a boiling kettle. Then they listened to a lady singing Cherry Ripe and inspected the mysterious minikins who proved to be puppets. Then, feeling somewhat tired and hungry, they ate mutton pies and drank pineapple punch at a chop stall by the amazing arcade, where there were little tables set out on the grass. By now, evening had come, and fireworks from the spectacular prototechnical display were making wonderful swoops and sparkles and whirls of color against the darkening sky. "I suppose we should be going soon," Simon said. "Mrs. Twite will be back by 10, and so the..." Mrs. Twite said, "Be back by 10, and so did the Duke." Justin and Dido immediately broke into pleading for just one more show. Look, there's a fortune teller, Madame Lola," said Dido. "We ain't been to her yet. Oh, please, Simon." Simon counted his money and reckoned that he had just enough for the fortune-teller and the journey home, so they entered Madame Lola's booth. She was a fat, dark gypsy woman with black eyes and a pronounced mustache, impressively dressed in a quantity of purple draperies. "Cross my hands with silver, young ladies and gentlemen," she said affably, and told them that Simon would have a long journey over water, that Justin would soon meet a long-lost relative, and Sophie would be lucky all her life. "Because of your pretty face and taking ways, my dearie." "Phew, what dull, mingy fortunes," cried Dido. "Tell mine. I'll lay there's something more exciting than that in it." She stuck out her grubby hand to the gypsy, who pored over it for a minute and looked at her oddly. "What's the score then, missus?" Dido said. "Doesn't I get a fortune?" "Of course, dearie," the gypsy said quickly. "You'll meet a tall, dark stranger, and have a surprise, and go on a journey." "Oh, what stuff!" Dido was impatient. "Nothing else?" "Only one other thing," the gypsy said. "You had a present today, didn't you, missy?" "Yes, I did." Dido glanced down proudly at her dress, which, contrary to her usual habit, she had contrived to keep clean and unspotted through all the hurly-burly of the fair. "Well, soon you'll be giving a present," said the gypsy. "You'll be giving it to the two people who gave you yours, and it'll be a gift as costs you all you've got to give, and is worth more than they know, and there'll be sorrow in the gift as well as happiness, but they'll be grateful to you for it as long as they live." "Is that all? Pooh, that's a capsy-weevily fortune. Give a present indeed. I'd like to know how when I ain't got any mint sauce, nothing more." "No," snapped the gypsy suddenly and unaccountably angry. "You've tired me out. The lot of you, be off and leave me in peace." They went all tired, they realized now. Justin stayed with the two girls under a tree at the common's edge, watching the fireworks, while Simon ran off and found a hackney carriage. They drove home in the silence of exhaustion, first to the Cobbs to drop Sophie, who was staying there for her week's holiday, and then on to Battersea Castle. Justin wanted to be left at the entrance of the tunnel, but Simon, who had promised the Duke to look after his nephew carefully, thought it best to take him to the main door. "Ain't this swish?" Dido kept murmuring as they bowled up the long drive between the gas flares. "Oh, odds bodkins," muttered Justin uneasily as they pulled up. A tall figure stood on the castle steps, awaiting them with folded arms. "It's Uncle Buckle!" exclaimed Dido. She put down the window on her side and called out, "Hello, Uncle Buckle, look at me! Ain't I the dandy? We've been to the fair!" "Dido!" exclaimed Mr. Buckle, thunderstruck. Then he turned to Justin, who was alighting, and said terribly, "My Lord Bakerloo, what is the meaning of this escapade?" "Uncle Bill said I might go," Justin mumbled sulkily. "I am sure he had no idea you were consorting with such low, vulgar companions as these." "I ain't low," Dido called out indignantly, but Mr. Buckle took no further notice of her, and went on rating Justin in a harsh, carrying voice. As there was nothing they could do for the unfortunate boy, and it seemed unkind to listen to his set-down, Simon asked the Jarvey to drive on to Southwark. The coach turned, and they continued their journey. "Poor Justin," said Dido, giggling as they rumbled through the dark streets. "I wonder if Uncle Buckle will dust his jacket for him. Do you reckon Ma will give me a trimming for going on a spree with a duke's nevvy?" Simon thought it unlikely. "Anyways," said Dido with a sigh, "I wouldn't care if she did. It's the best bang-up day of my whole life, and I'll never forget it, never. Wasn't the Punch and Judy a rib-smasher?" She fell into a silence of recollection. "I never knew Mr. Buckle was your uncle," Simon remarked presently. "Law, yes, he's Ma's brother, but we ain't gentility enough for him, so he don't visit us above once in a blue moon. I'll tell you what, Simon," said Dido, looking carefully around as if to make sure that Mr. Buckle was not riding with them in the hack. "I can't give you a present, like Madame Lola said, but there's one thing I can do for you, and I'd like to, as you give me such a prime good time. I can tell you what happened to Dr. Field." Simon was silent with astonishment for a moment or two. At last he said cautiously, "I should like to know that, Dido." "Well, it was like this," she told him. "Pa said I was never to mention it to a living soul, or he'd beat me and shut me up in the boot hole, but I don't care.
You see, Dr. Field used to lodge in our house." At that moment, the hack turned into Rose Alley and stopped outside number 8. "Why, there's Ma!" cried Dido. "Wait till I tell her what a famous time we had. Ma! Ma! We saw the Drury Lane drama." She opened the door and tumbled out onto the pavement, eager to relate her day's doings. Mrs. Twite, however, only said, It's long past your bedtime, child. Come along at once." Simon paid off the driver and turned to follow Mrs. Twite, but she seemed to have locked the door behind her, and, as he rattled the latch unavailingly and then rapped the knocker, something dark and soft and suffocating was forced down over his head, and a pair of hands gripped his throat. He struggled and struck out, but other hands pinioned his arms and legs, while the clutch on his throat tightened. A rocket seemed to explode on the back of his head. He crumpled forward onto the steps and was conscious of nothing more. And that's the end of Chapter 9.